I'm Dr. Naidoo, Harvard Nutritional Psychiatrist, and I'm on the Sachin Syal's Check the Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Ochakde Show. We're Silicon Valley's first business and self-improvement podcast for teens, hosted by a teen me. I'm Sachin Syal. I'm an 18-year-old award-winning entrepreneur and podcaster from the Bay Area, and I interview remarkable and influential entrepreneurs, executives, investors, leaders, and just inspiring individuals that are helping people from all walks of life so we can learn from their stories and level up ourselves. I am also the co-founder and CEO of 3doshas.com. I started a coaching company where we're transforming lives with three dosha sciences from yoga and Ayurveda. And the purpose of this show is to inspire you to go for it, which is what the Punjabi word ochakte means. Today we have an absolute legend. Like, I've been a huge fan of hers for so long. We have our very special guest today is Dr. Uma Naidoo. She's a Harvard-trained nutritional psychiatrist. And on top of that, like, she's an MD doctor, and she went to go further, and she's a professional chef from Cambridge School of Culinary Arts, and she's a nutritional biologist and author and instructor at MasterClass. She founded and directs the first hospital-based nutritional psychiatry service in the US, and she is the director of nutritional and lifestyle psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital, and she's actually in Massachusetts right now. And she's also the director of the nutritional psychiatry at the MGH Academy, and she's also serving on the faculty at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Naidoo is the author of This Is Your Brain on Food, The Food-Mood Connection, and Calm Your Mind with Food, which was endorsed by NFL legend Tom Brady. In addition, she's an advisor at the World Economic Forum and is part of the United Nations Mental Health Task Force. She's also on the scientific and business advisory board of the biotech company Viome, which specializes in microbiome testing. And she's known as the Food Mood MD. So welcome to the Ochakde Show, Dr. Naidoo. How are you and what's new and exciting?
I am very well, Sachin. Thank you for that intro. It's great to see you. Great to meet you.
Awesome. What's new and exciting right now? So you're in Massachusetts. You're
Yeah.
traveling. You said you were at a conference, right?
Yeah, so it's been a busy time, a lot of different conferences, and I was just at a major academic psychiatry conference in Miami, ACLP, where we did an invited presidential presentation on nutrition and the brain. So it included huge parts of nutritional psychiatry. So I was really happy to see that both, a lot of the larger psychiatric organizations, including APA, which has a lifestyle team next year. So the fact that they are embracing these additional ways for people to feel better, I think is very important.
Awesome. And it's absolutely an honor to have you on my show. As I told you
Thank
pre-show
you.
before we started recording, I've seen like a lot of your stuff. And you've been interviewed by some of my mentors. Um, you've been on like you're featured by CNBC, Vogue, India, like so many things. It's just awesome to have you on this show. I was gonna ask you like what inspired you to become a nutritional psychiatrist and then go even further and become faculty at Harvard Medical School?
So, I can answer the second part first because that's easy. I trained at Harvard, and it was a natural kind of progression after you train and go through residency and all of the educational steps that you join the faculty. If you find, the right fit and the right job, not everyone studies at Harvard and then stays there, but for me, it was really a good fit. And I think one of the things that really worked for me is the fact that I've been supported in my really out of the box different ideas around bringing forward nutritional psychiatry, founding my clinic, and doing this work. Now, I think that, it's kind of a long story to go through what inspired me at the start of my childhood. My mom is a double boarded physician. She's now retired. So during the day, my parents, I was a preschool dropout. So despite all those great accolades, you've heard me say this before, I actually didn't want to go to preschool. But that's because my grandmother and my grandparents were so much more fun. And I spent the daytime with them. And I really learned healthy eating. I learned yoga and meditation from them. Ate fresh vegetables and fresh foods that she would prepare, and I'd help I do simple things as a little kid. But then they'd eat with me. They'd sit down and we'd eat lunch and, they'd engage me and we'd be doing things. That was a very formative part of my childhood. And as I, went through school, medical school, and the moment that I started learning about medications, I knew that they were life-saving for many of my patients.
Hmm.
But I thought there was a gap. Like, how can you be prescribing something and only checking someone's weight and height and some parameters, maybe even some lab tests, but not really going into, well, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? Do you exercise? Do you, lifestyle factors or anything like that? And I thought it was a gap. A patient pointed it out to me indirectly early on in my career, and it was really a light bulb moment for me and helped me decide that I wanted to dive deeper because when someone is armed with that information, they will act differently. They might want to change their behavior. They might still need medications, but it doesn't mean that they can't start to manage things like their weight and how they're feeling emotionally. And that's really what made me and almost drove me to dive deeper, study more, learn more, and bring forward my work in this way.
That's amazing. I really look up to psychiatrists because I think it's really commendable work. You could like li literally
Thank
like
you.
they say that the job of a doctor is to save lives, and psychiatrists actually do that. Um, so
Thank you for saying that because I think
yeah.
a lot of people who I really appreciate you saying that, and let me tell you why. Psychiatrists in general hospitals are not always as appreciated
Hmm.
because although we are trained fully clinically, when we branch out into mental health, we are less hands-on. So yes, we check blood pressures and heights and things like that, but we do less of that active physical exam. But the other reason is that there are a lot of people right now, Sachin, that are messaging about mental health. I think
Hmm.
it's important, right? I think the podcast work that you do and that other podcasters and influencers and doctors do is important. But psychiatrists and the work in mental health shouldn't be taken lightly because we do, in fact, literally save people's lives. And I think that that's often misunderstood by other professions and sometimes by influencers when they are talking about mental health. They don't realize messaging has to be really careful because you really are dealing with a vulnerability, you're dealing with an illness, and you're dealing with someone who may, in fact, be suicidal. So you have to be very careful in all that you do. So I appreciate your acknowledging all
Of
of that.
course, of course. Actually, you're my first doctor on my podcast, so I'm really excited about
Ah,
that. And I'm glad you brought up
well,
yoga because I'm going to talk about that with you more. But I'm a foodie, so I literally just went the other day, like literally last night. My grandma and I got Thai food and stuff, and I'm like, "You're a professional chef too? Wait, what?" I got confused. I thought he was a different Naidoo. I'm like, "Are there two Naidoo's? One chef, one psychiatrist?" But then I realized it was the same person. So
same
why did you
person,
want to
right?
become? Why? How did you become a professional chef? And like, why did you want to become a professional chef?
So it's interesting. My childhood, as I grew up, everyone in the family cooked, extended Indian family. So grandmothers, older cousins, aunts, my mom. So I sat around tasting really delicious, healthy food. But there wasn't need for me to do anything, but I was always around food. So I started cooking later in life, but I found that when I did, I'd borrow my mom's recipes and I'd try to follow things that I'd watched. It was my place of peace. It was really when my friends, colleagues were talking about, complaining about what they were going to either make for dinner and whatever it was, that was my sort of quiet time and my peaceful time. And I recognized that it was a space that I really could feel creative in. And when I had identified that Julia Child was my food hero, and when I learned about her life, read her biography and her cookbooks, and realized that this was her second or third career. I thought, well, if she did it after all this, why not me? Like, why can't I love cooking so much? I want to, want to know things on a deeper level. Why not me? And that's when I decided to, as an attending, go to culinary school. And thinking back, I'm not quite sure how I managed those types of duty hours, but I did. And I think it was driven by loving what I was doing so much. So cooking is very much a part of my life that that's my creative space. It's sort of my blank canvas.
That's awesome. It reminds me of my senior year in high school. I took a culinary arts class and I got my Serve Safe certificate. Honestly, like that's probably one of
Yeah,
most memorable fun class I've ever taken in high school was
It's a very
culinary
good
arts.
class. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
learn so much, and actually, there's a lot of life skills you can learn from cooking. It's crazy. Like people just think, oh, you just mix ingredients, you put in. It's not that. It's actually more
It's
deep than that, in
true.
my opinion.
It really is true. I learned so much about organizing my time when I went to professional cooking classes. And I now think that I do a little bit better than I used to. So it did teach me a lot of other life skills.
This wasn't on the question list, but let me just throw it in here. What's one of your favorite things to make or cook?
So I love sort of tasty, Asian um, fusion cuisine.
Yes.
Grew up eating Indian food and
Yeah.
love the spices. It doesn't have to be hot, but just very flavorful. So I will do interesting things like make homemade paneer or take tikka masala and put it on cauliflower and put it on other
Yeah.
vegetables and do interesting things that, are a little bit out of the box, but that's because I want to challenge myself and, also make very traditional foods. But
Yeah.
yeah, those are some of my
I'm getting,
favorites.
now that you brought up paneer and tikka masala, I'm getting a little hungry, but I gotta finish the interview before I eat. Okay, this is probably one of the biggest questions that my audience wanted me to ask you because it's exactly what you specialize in and you became famous for this. And the question is, how does food impact our mood? And what food should we eat and avoid?
Right. So, one of the things that nutritional psychiatry brings forward is I like to say that the mood food connection is really explained by one of the mechanisms is the gut brain connection. Hippocrates commented on this eons ago, the father of modern
Mhm.
medicine, but the science had to follow. We now understand that there are trillions of microbes that live in our gut microbiome. And they are there to really help us. They are involved in immunity, mental well being, sleep and circadian rhythm, which is our internal body clock, vitamin production, hormone production, so many other things. And when they are functioning at their best, it's when we're eating healthy, feeding them lots of fiber and prebiotic foods, um, getting them the nutrients that they need, then they function well. But when that mechanism is upset by eating poorly, eating ultra processed foods, eating the sort of standard American diet, which is called sad for a reason, that disruption occurs and it leads to dysbiosis or an imbalance over time and a process of inflammation in the gut, which can really upset the balance of things. When that happens, the breakdown products of food, instead of being what we want, which are short chain fatty acids, ends up being toxic polysaccharides, which start to damage the lining of the gut. So over time, this is when you start to see an uptake of mental health symptoms like increased anxiety, low mood, poor sleep, and so much more. So it's a mechanism that I think helps people understand because I often say to them, what happens when you have a headache? And they usually say, no, of course, that's a silly question. I take a headache pill if I have a bad headache. But I usually kind of push them a little more like, what happens? Do you take the headache pill, dissolve it in water, and rub it on your head because you have a headache? No, I take a glass of water and I swallow the pill. And then what happens? Well, hopefully 10 minutes later, my headache goes away. Well, in a similar way, the food that we eat goes through our digestive tract but works elsewhere in the body. And one of those places is the brain, just like that headache pill. So it obviously gets more complicated. In terms of, I'll start with the easy one, the foods that you really want to kind of cut back on. And I don't like to use the word avoid. I sort of say limit because what happens is that in American culture, we have this eat this, not that mentality, and people feel they can never eat, a cupcake on their birthday. And that's not what I want people to feel. If you want a piece slice of cake on your birthday, enjoy it. But you also know the rest of the time you're exercising, eating healthy, trying to live a mindful life, etc. So the ones we want people to think about more carefully are processed, ultra processed foods, junk foods, fast foods. Things like fast food, French fries have added sugars that you don't taste, but they're added to make them hyper palatable so that we enjoy them, then we crave them, and then we want the bigger size and we want more the next day. The added and refined sugars in food, these are bad not only for mental health, they're bad for our brain. Artificial sweeteners, the older ones, and diet sodas and other diet foods are very disruptive to the gut. The unhealthy fat, like trans fats and hydrogenated oils, are ones to watch out for. And things like, fried foods, uh, things that are in packages, ideas like cereals are really ultra processed and with not much nutrition in them. So those are some large categories of things to be careful about. The foods that we want people to eat, I think about it as categories of food, and I think about it as a nutritional psychiatry plate. So I like people to think on that plate there should be 50% different vegetables, leafy greens, lots of colors. Think about a really large, scrumptious salad, bright colors, and lots of veggies in it, because these are satiating and pretty low calorie. Then I want you to think about a clean protein. It could be salmon, it could be chicken, it could be grass-fed beef, it could be tofu, and healthy oils like avocado oil or paste of avocado, and then your grains, like things like barley. When I say grains, I like to talk about actual whole grains, and think about that as a smaller portion of your plate because your vegetables and your protein are going to be really satiating. So rather than the way that um, sometimes you think about it as a very large amount of the carbohydrate on the plate, I want people to invert that a little bit and realize they can be satiated by the vegetables, different colors, different textures, then adding on beans, nuts, seeds, legumes, things like omega-3 fatty acids from either seafood or plant-based sources. I want people to think about nutrients like vitamin D, magnesium, and zinc, all of which you can get from food and sunlight with vitamin D. So those are the categories of foods I want people to think about, including in their diet.
Awesome. This is really powerful stuff. I've heard of like that like the food you eat impacts your mood because like your gut, and then there's a good connection between your gut and your brain as well. And I've even
Yes.
heard people say like, oh, food can literally be medicine. Like some of this like the stuff you
Yeah,
eat really impacts your mood, and I actually do feel that. Like when I eat healthy foods, I feel more
good.
energized, my mood is better. But when I kind of like eat like foods that aren't that healthy, you get like kind of lethargic and like tired and
And slow down sometimes.
yeah,
The
yeah.
other thing, the other thing that I should mention for your audience is that the gut and brain are connected, even though they're in different parts of the body. They originate from the exact same cells in the human embryo. So they originate from those cells, they grow, develop, and grow apart, and then are connected by the vagus nerve, which is our 10th cranial nerve. And one of the purposes of the vagus nerve is that it allows for bidirectional messaging of neurotransmitters between these two organ systems. So that's important for people to understand. And then when you realize that 90 to 95% of serotonin and serotonin receptors are in the gut, you start to put together that where the food is being digested is also where so much of your serotonin and other neurotransmitters are existing.
Yeah, it's just healthy eating is really important, and I'm glad that it's becoming more like known. I think like my mom and my dad used to tell me when they were kids, like you anyone ate everything, like sodas and like to all this stuff, and no one really cared that much. I'm really happy that it's becoming more popular, and it's helping people live better lives and have better mental health, which is the best thing. I was gonna ask you about yoga and Ayurveda and about my company. So I
Mm-hmm,
started a coaching company with my family. It's called 3doshas.com. It's an award-winning coaching
mm-hmm.
platform, and our goal is to
Awesome.
transform lives through coaching, through 3dosha sciences from yoga and Ayurveda. I was gonna ask you, what are your thoughts on utilizing the Ayurvedic doshas, so the three doshas, to improve our mental health?
I think any way that we can integrate what has been done in Eastern medicine for eons is really critical. Things like, let's take an ashwagandha.
Hmm.
There's a good amount of evidence. It's getting to be more known. And it is very bitter tasting. So this is a
Yeah.
place where supplement is a good idea. But it really can help lower anxiety, and anxiety has increased by 25% since the pandemic. That was published in the Lancet, and it's the reason that I wrote my second book, Calm Your Mind with Food, because I felt that people just needed solutions outside of just a pill. Medications can be very important in anxiety, but beyond that, even eating healthy can be really, really critical. So there's an example of how I think those principles can be integrated. There's also really good growing scientific evidence around things like yoga meditation as well as things like breathwork yoga, like pranayama yoga.
Hmm.
There was a study published in 2020 that was actually looking at cardiac disease, but secondarily found an improvement in depression and anxiety when people were learning breathwork yoga. So one of the things I practice a holistic and integrated approach with my patient, and I still prescribe medications if and when needed. But I always teach people or ask them to learn a breathwork method because it's a way to help calm the mind. It's a way to help get out of a bad mood. It's a way to feel less anxious, and it's very powerful. So, big believer in all of that.
Nice. Yeah, I was actually reading up on both Surya Namaskars, which is like yoga and stretching, and pranayama. It's crazy some of the like major benefits and how beneficial it is for some people. In addition to like psychiatric medication, if you combine the two, it's even better.
More powerful.
Um, I'm also excited to ask you this question because one of my mentors who I've interviewed on this show, Naveen Jain, you're on
Mhm.
his team at Viome. I was curious, what is your role at his company, Viome?
So it's kind of a small role. I was asked to be an advisor, and I reviewed the science of what they're doing, and I do think that they are really looking at the microbiome, one of my favorite things, in a very careful way using AI and machine learning models. And so it's a very small role, but I liked the principle of what they're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, Naveen is an amazing guy. He's really been helpful to me and he was on my show. He's one of my biggest guests. He's a super successful like billionaire entrepreneur. So I really look up to him and I look up to you as well. I was
Thank
gonna
you.
ask you kind of this might be a little controversial question. I don't know, we'll see, but it's like kind of trending
Mhm.
right now and I've seen a lot of young people talking about it. I was gonna ask you, as a Harvard psychiatrist, what are your thoughts on psychedelics and like there's something ayahuasca like that. What are your thoughts on those sorts of
Yeah.
things?
So I think that the science is quite early. And I think that to come to conclusions or draw conclusions about the health benefits or the healing benefits is probably, in my opinion, a little premature. That doesn't discount the fact that people have had very positive experiences and feel it to be enlightening and write about it or talk about it. But there's a broader breadth of science behind that, and I think as a scientist, as a psychiatrist, as someone who deals with the brain all the time, I think that is not only our most important organ, it's a very precious organ. So I want people to be a little bit cautious about what they use and what they take. Um, and I sort of the opinion that this is still early days. Um,
Yeah, it is
and
pretty
open
early.
to open to what people think about it, but it's not necessarily something I'm asking my patients to do
Yeah,
or to engage in.
yeah. And I think you probably have to be like 18 or older, right, to do psychedelics. So it won't really work for child
Well,
psychiatry.
I don't know the guidelines around
Yeah,
that, but that being said, Sachin, people get access to stuff at all ages and stages, and that's why we just need to be careful.
I guess yeah, whatever helps with like a medical professional supervising is the best thing.
That's right. Having a medical doctor who actually knows and understands
Yes.
what's going on and is guiding you is definitely something you should consider if you are heading down that pathway.
Hmm. So I know you talk about eating healthy foods a lot, but I was going to ask you, besides that, what do you think is one thing that people, all sorts of people from all walks of life should be doing every day to maintain like good mental health?
That's a tough one. It's hard to say that it's just one thing. So, healthy eating and good nutrition of is a foundational pillar. But I think simple things like spending ten minutes in outdoors in daylight will allow for metabolism of a good amount of your vitamin D. Vitamin D really helps mood and lowers anxiety. Learning a breathwork practice, like I said, finding a mindfulness practice that works for you. Maybe you didn't grow up meditating like I did, or but you can learn a meditation practice or a mindfulness practice, something that appeals to you. For some people, it's simply closing their eyes and thinking about a beautiful place, thinking about maybe the ocean if that's a place they love. Maybe it's the mountains for someone else. So it doesn't have to be a formal meditation. But something that grounds them and feels like a mindful practice. I also think a huge thing is hydration. So it's not one thing. For me, it's always a gamut of things. But hydration is hugely important because when you're well hydrated, you are less anxious and your mood is generally better. So dehydration can spin off into many different issues.
I always make sure I stay hydrated. See, I got my regular water and coconut water.
And you
Uh,
go,
yeah. Let's talk about your books. Really awesome books. And even I was looking them up. I'm like, whoa, Tom Brady went on his Instagram once and like reposted a picture of one of your books and said this is so helpful. He's been really open actually about mental health. He's been awesome on that. I was gonna ask you, can you just share
he
a
is
little bit
awesome.
about your books and what are they about? And
Yes,
are they good for teens to
sure.
read or is it more for older audiences, stuff like that?
Sachin, I'm delighted to tell you that so many teens reach out to my platform because they either are doing some studying or they're doing a project in school on nutrition and mental health, or they're interested in mental health like yourself. So they've read them. So it really is meant for any age group. It depends on how much into science you are. They heavily reference, so you'll find that if there's something mentioned, the scientific reference is there for the nerds like me and science-based folks out there that really want it. The first book is This Is Your Brain on Food, and it looks
Yeah,
at different mental health conditions and the premises of nutritional psychiatry, explaining the gut-brain connection and looking at conditions from depression and anxiety to PTSD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, the foods to embrace and the foods to cut back on. There are recipes to follow, all matched to the different conditions to include those healthy foods. The second book was really written because of the huge increase in anxiety through the pandemic. Um, and Calm Your Mind with Food is about really using the science behind nutritional psychiatry to help improve anxiety. There's an anti anxiety shopping list meant to help you choose the best foods, the science behind the foods, a protocol to follow. And you can do a day, you can do the week, you can choose a piece of it that helps you, and matching recipes that are intended to make things easy for you. They're not supposed to be hard, we're not wanting you to make the souffle. We just want you to eat healthy food. And it's meant for, I think that's where teenagers would really love the recipes to try out at home if they cook, because these are things that will not only be flavorful and delicious, but good for your mental well-being.
that's amazing. And this was also when I see like when I emailed you and then I heard back from your team, I was like so excited because I'm like, wait, this person literally does like a class on MasterClass. I have to ask her about that. So can you tell me about what you're doing as an instructor on MasterClass? I saw the trailer with you and a bunch of other
Right,
mental health
right.
professionals, but can you just share with my audience what are you working on with MasterClass?
Sure. So I was invited to help teach a class on brain health because of my work in nutritional psychiatry and as a psychiatrist and brain scientist. So I taught the class, but my component also had cooking because I'm also a chef. And so I worked alongside a chef and we talked about healthy foods. We prepared some dishes together that were versatile and that were also very delicious. So it really was a wonderful platform to share my work and message about mental health, which, as you know, is so important.
Mhm.
And really share with the world that there are more solutions in mental well-being, and food can be one of them as a foundational pillar. So it was really exciting to work with them. They were great.
Yeah, and a MasterClass like really invests. I've seen like some of the behind the scenes, so they're probably like pro cameras
Yeah,
and lighting and everything everywhere. So that's awesome that you have that.
it was a very fun experience, and they are sending my episode to. I think my episode will be showing up on Delta Airlines soon,
Nice,
and in
nice.
certain hotel chains. So they create all these contracts with different um, organizations to be able to share the episodes. So it'll be interesting. I'll wait to see if that when that happens.
I'll definitely check it out as well too. So Dr. Naidu, as we wrap up here, these are the last two questions that I asked to all my guests. The first one is, what's your all-time best advice for teens?
My best advice for teens is never worry alone. Remember that you always have friends, family, supports, loved ones, parents, siblings that you can go to. I think we're living in a very stressful time
Mhm.
with a very heightened suicidal rate and suicide rate in teenagers. And I just want them to know that there's always someone. There's the 988 helpline, there are doctors in emergency rooms. The fun thing is when you're a doctor, someone has to always be in the hospital. So when I say you're never alone, I really do mean that. There's always someone you can reach out to. Um, and the other thing I would say is have fun, enjoy life. You're only at that age once, and you're doing this fun stuff with the podcast. Follow things that you love to do, and you're a great example of that.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And the last question of the day is, what was your favorite part of being a guest on the Ochakde show today?
I think it has to be that really cute T-shirt. So
Oh,
your
thank you.
swag
Thank
is,
you.
is, is, is very fun. It seems like you might have designed that. So that was
Yes, I
very
did
fun. And
actually.
meeting you, because
Yeah.
we've communicated a lot with my team, and it was great that we could make this happen.
Well, Dr. Naidu, like the reason I even have like this confidence and ambition is because of people like you. And I get big guests like you, it
Oh,
really
thank
keeps
you.
me going, right? I'm like, wait, if I can get Dr. Uma Naidu, I'm gonna get someone else and keep getting. So I appreciate it. Thank you for changing the world and introducing the world to nutritional psychiatry. You're like one of the first ever people to like talk about it. And thank you for making
Thank
the
you.
world a better place as a psychiatrist and as an influencer now. Where can people find you online?
The best place to find me is umanaidoomd.com, which is my website. And I want people to sign up for my Substack newsletter, because that's where you'll
Oh,
hear from
nice.
me every week
Why have I
with
not done
different
that yet? I'm gonna
foods.
do that right now.
That's right. You need to sign up for my Substack newsletter. So we talk about a healthy food each week, and we kind of tell you, how to buy it, what the science is, and then you can also subscribe to get the recipes associated, because people love to know what to do with the food. Also, check out my website. I have a course in nutritional psychiatry that I teach. My books are available there, and I've also just launched a new YouTube channel, which is small and
Yes,
growing.
yes, I saw.
So please subscribe and check it out. We're still growing, so
I'll link all
we
that
are we
in
are
the so
yes,
for
please.
for
We
people
are we are
watching, the website will be in the description below, and her YouTube channel will be in the description below. That was an amazing episode. Thank you so much for being on my
Thank
show. I
you.
really appreciate it. So you can go to her website, go to her YouTube channel, check it out. Check her out her masterclass on CNBC and everything, honestly. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for watching the episode. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.